English Literature First Term, Essential Fiction, Lesson number 5, The Stove Haunting. Through this session, we are mainly focusing on the lesson objectives, the author who composed the story, the characters of the story, and the explanation of the story, and some questions from the story. First of all, we will have a quick look at the author who composed the story. She is Belle Mooney. Beryl Ann Belle Mooney is an English journalist and also a broadcaster who was born on the 8th of October in 1946 in United Kingdom. She has written many fictions and non-fictions for both adults and young children like you all. For an example, I Am Bored, Bad Day Boomy, The Penguin Book of Marriage, The Voice of Silence. They are some examples for stories which were written by Belle Mooney. Out of those books which were written by Belle Mooney, The Stove Haunting is also one such story. In page number 16 of your English Literature Anthology, you can find an extract from the book The Stove Haunting. I think most of you all have read the story now. What were the characters that you found in the story? These are the major characters that you can find in the story. Daniel, George, William's father, William's mother, William, who is the oldest boy, Rose, who is the oldest girl, twin brothers, and baby boy. They are the main characters of the story. The story opens up introducing the character Daniel. There's something with Daniel, right? Daniel has gone through a time sleep and found himself back in the last century in a time of terrible poverty and unrest. From this you all can understand the particular character called Daniel. He has time traveled to a particular century where most of the people were suffering from poverty and unrest. Although his own circumstances are good, he meets others who are suffering badly. That means there were so many people who were suffering terribly from poverty and unrest. We'll see what he sees in this period of time. First, the writer describes about a house which is witnessed by George and Daniel. What sort of a house is it? Actually, it was a very small house, just like a hut. The walls were made of dirt or clay and there were many holes in the walls. By reading this description, what can you say about the house? Most probably, some poor people must be living in this house. What about the roof? The roof was covered with straw and similar material and it was dropped down to the ground. That means the roof was thatched with some kinds of straw-like material. There were two small windows of the door and they were covered with sacks. The windows were covered with sacks. What did they hear? They heard a crying sound from the house and they did not understand what it was. Anyway, George knocked at the door and who opened the door? The door was opened by a man. And what did he do? He grabbed George's hand and bowed down at Daniel. Then after he took both of them inside the house. Instead of offering chairs, what did he do? He gave some rough wooden boxes for George and Daniel to sit on. Furthermore, he gave some beer to George, but he refused to drink that beer. When you read the story, you will come across the way that the writer explains the nature of the house, right? This small house was made up of one small room and there were two candles lighting in the room. The house was very small and there was only one small room. It was also lit up by only two candles. There was an iron pot which was hanging by a black chain. You all should have to imagine these things now. And also there had been two sacks which were laid in front of the fire as a temporary carpet. As a temporary carpet, what has been there? Two sacks. What else could be seen in this house? Yes, there had been a bookshelf in the wall. Two onions were kept on a bookshelf and also they found a rough wooden table. They say that it was the only proper furniture that could be seen in the room. And also there was a half a loaf of grainy bread with a knife on that table. Anyway, the two boys, George and Daniel, were served with this grainy bread. What did they do? George refused that too. In one corner of the room, they found someone. Who was that? There was a woman seated on a pile of sacks. With whom was she there? There was a child in her arms crying out loud, right? And they tell us that the child was about 18 months of age. Even mother tried to smile at the visitor. She failed in it. She could not smile actually. Why is that? When the woman was inquired about the baby, she began to speak about her little baby. There she reveals the bad health condition of the baby with the boys. And also furthermore, she tells about her other children as well, about William, Rose and her twin sisters, what they were doing and so on. And also they explained George how they managed their food during the winter and the circumstances they were facing in that particular period of time. Then the man suggests them to go up and see the children, what they were doing and so on. So they went up to see them. There was a single room at the top of the cottage, but there was only one candle in that room. That means dimly lit room. It was packed with beds and it was divided into two by hanging an old sheet at the center of it. The single room was divided into two halves by hanging an old sheet at the center. One side there was a white bed and a baby cot which was used by the baby. On the other side there was a small bed and a shelf bed. 4 children were there just lying on the bed without sleeping. That means inside that small room 4 children were there. Even though they were lying on the bed, they were not sleeping. All of them looked very thin and they looked very sad. After witnessing all this, Daniel and George come back downstairs. There they notice that the baby had stopped crying. Then George realizes and reveals the reason why the baby was crying. Actually, what was the reason for the baby to cry? It was because he was ill. He was ill because of the adverse weather and also due to the poor living standard in their house. The reason for this baby's sickness was revealed by George. Here you are given some questions so that you have to read the lesson again and again and you have to write answers for these questions. Then only you will be thorough in whatever the things that you have learned from the story. Okay, so you have to write down these questions in your writing book and try answering all the questions. I hope you all enjoyed the lesson. Hope to meet you again with another session. Until then, stay safe and have a nice day. Thank you very much.